I want to hear cannons. Downfield, pull up, ball to the 5, touchdown Tampa Bay. My Evans does it again. Fire the cannons, Bucs.
It's first and goal. That's picked off. That's picked off. And who else? Rondé Barber. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers may ride to the Super Bowl with that one.
Third down, 18. Dropping Gannon, looking Gannon. Throws up with a head. Intercepted. At the 30. Derek Brooks 30. Brooks to the 25, 20. Derek Brooks all the way. There it is. The dagger's in. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
48-41 is your final score in this game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers had 551 total yards on offense, 349 through the air, 202 on the ground. This was one of the best offensive performances from a season full of incredible offensive performances. As I mentioned, 500-plus yards of offense. Baker Mayfield tosses 5 touchdowns. We get to see Kyle Trask and Sean Tucker take control in the fourth quarter. Jalen McMillan with multiple touchdowns. Mike Evans with multiple touchdowns. Bucky Irving gets 1,000 yards on the season. A Duck gets into the lineup and forces a blocked punt for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This game quite literally had it all. I mean, just a very, very exciting day, if you couldn't tell. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a live edition of the Cannon Fire podcast on YouTube. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. The Buccaneers back in the win column, my friend. They extend their record to 9-7 with one game left, but a dominant win today and a dominant showing from really both sides of the football. When you talk about complementary football, this is exactly what the Buccaneers needed today. They made a statement against an NFC South team.
Yeah, they definitely did. And it was actually 48-14, not 48-41.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I guess I gave the Panthers a little too much credit there. I got caught up in it.
But yeah, I mean, just what you said, right? I think it's look, we sort of, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that said, you doubted this team. Look, yeah, I don't think you can really expect a football team. I don't know if you're going to predict a football team to put up 48 points in a game. So yeah, we both thought that this game was going to be pretty close, right? And it was close the last time. Really, a game the Buccaneers should have lost last time out, right? These two teams played, but this time was different, right? The Bucs put their foot on the gas pedal and didn't take it off. Whereas the last time at Carolina, there were times where it was like lulls, basically, and it almost cost them in that game. This time around, though, like I said, they never took that pedal off the gas. I foot off the gas pedal, I guess you could say, and the offense just rolled, right? I mean, from the jump, really. I Bleav the Bucs only punted one time. In the entire day. So it's a pretty good day when you do that. And they also didn't have any turnovers. So it was a pretty good day when you got no turnovers and only one punt. And basically, the only scoring drives that didn't end in the scores, I Bleav, were that punt, and it might have been the final kneel down, and then the one before the half, I think. That might have been the same punt one. But yeah, like I said, dominant performance by the offense. Defense making the stops when they needed to earlier in the game, right? Obviously, once the game got out of hand too much, then it becomes a little bit easier on defense, to sit back, don't allow any big plays. But the defense got some critical stops there earlier in the first half and allowed the Bucs to stretch the lead out a little bit more. So, and they didn't start off good, right? The defense did not have a hot start, but they were able to rebound as well. So really a complete team win, I think. Even had a special teams touchdown, which is rare, obviously. So special teams, that's the definition of a complete win, when your offense, your defense, and your special teams are all contributing to the victory, and that's the result you get. So now, basically, for Bucs fans, it is quite simple. The Bucs do need a little bit of help to clinch the NFC South. They cannot clinch it tonight, but if the Commanders beat the Falcons tonight, if the Falcons lose the for game tonight, that's Sunday Night Football. All the Bucs have to do is beat New Orleans next week, and they're NFC South champions. There's a couple other scenarios we'll get into. We'll probably get into them at some point later this week. But yeah, that's basically it. They got one step closer, right? But the critical step needed was to win this game today, and the Bucs did just that in a pretty convincing way.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a couple of moments, I mean, this was a game all around that you can say good things about. But there were a couple of moments there where it got a little hairy. The end of the first half, the Bucs had a tough stretch. They could not keep their offense on the field to milk out that first half, so they took the ball back after a Carolina scoring drive, held onto it for less than a minute. And let's keep in mind, Carolina's scoring drive was like 25 seconds. Like they marched right down the field. So they couldn't get off of the field. It was a 40-yard touchdown pass from Adam Thielen. And then that made it 27-14 with 46 seconds left in the first half. So they had the ball with under a minute, couldn't run the clock out. Fortunately for them, Carolina marches down the field. Eddie Pinheiro misses a 53-yard field goal wide left. He missed 2 field goals in the loss at Carolina, and at that point, the Buccaneers went into halftime leading 27-14. So I would say that's the sketchiest things got today, because in that second half...
Yeah, and mind you, the Panthers got the ball to start the second half. So, like, let's say if Pinheiro makes that field goal, it's 27-17. The game could have been 27-24 before the Bucs offense ever touched the ball again. So, again, that's where I'm saying, okay, yeah, the defense allowing Carolina to get into a position to kick that field goal isn't great. Obviously, you had the roughing the passer penalty on Vita Vea there to put him 15 yards ahead. But then the Adam Thielen, if Adam Thielen played every game against the Bucs, he'd make a Pro Bowl again. He torches them. But but then that first drive, and I thought that's when I gained the confidence that the Bucs were going to win. After that first drive of the second half by Carolina, to be able to force a punt there was massive, because you couldn't allow Carolina back into that game. I think had you allowed it, let's say a touchdown there, you got it. That's a one-score game again. It's 27-21. I think that might have given Carolina a lot of momentum, had them feeling good. Instead, you sort of closed the door, and then you respond with a touchdown drive of your own. And once that happened, it made it 34-14. To me, that was kind of like there was a lot of time left, but that pretty much ended the game for me at that point. So, yeah, like I said, the offense was great, and we're going to talk plenty about the offense today and throughout the week, but I don't think we can discredit, the job this defense did either. It was frustrating at times, right, especially in the first half, and like I said, allowing Carolina to get in the position to kick that field goal anyway, but I think they did their job overall.
Yeah, and I mean, you take things into consideration, the injuries got to be at the top of the list here when you talk about the secondary. Jamel Dean left the game today with not just a knee injury, but plural knees injury, something that had popped up during practice this week and unfortunately took him out of the game. He did make a couple of plays while he was in the game. I know people are going to give this secondary a hard time because of how the Panthers were throwing the football and a couple of the big chunk plays, but some of those corners made big plays today. I can pick out a few big pass breakups from Jamel Dean covering Xavier Legette, and then Zion McCollum popped up a few times, had a big-time pass deflection. Even J.J. Russell, I think, had a hand on a football at one time for a big-time pass deflection, which stalled out a Carolina drive. They couldn't do much of anything in that third and fourth quarter. So good on the defense to really come around, and something that I don't think is going to be talked about enough this week was just that recovery from the defense to not allow things get out of hand. And with as short-handed as they are, you got to give them props there. But let's get into the main story here, and that is obviously going to be the offense. As we had touted before, 551 total yards, 48 points, the most the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have scored in Raymond James Stadium since January 17th, 2022. Or I'm sorry. Let me get that date correct. It was against the Panthers in 2022 when they scored that many points. They won 41-17 on January 9th, 2022. There is the date. Let me make sure I get that correct for you there. Baker Mayfield, probably his most impressive game of the season. And again, we're talking about a season where he's got a lot of impressive games when the Buccaneers offense gets rolling and all three phases of the team are potent like they were today. 27 for 32, 359 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. He had 5 incompletions on the day, 5 touchdowns, 153 passer rating. He wasn't perfect on like 2 plays. The Buccaneers offense was on pace to run maybe 100 after that first half. So I do not think you could have asked for a much better day from Baker. You know, there were a couple of moments where had to do some maneuvering in the pocket. Those 2 plays that I mentioned, they were overthrows. One was to Ryan Miller. I think the other one was looking for Devin Colt, but both of them were sure-handed touchdown grabs. He just had to do some adjusting in the pocket, had to make some room with his legs, and was off target. But man, the rest of the game, I mean, that is exactly what you want from a franchise quarterback. Baker looked awesome.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty impressive. There was, he stood in there a couple times. There was a couple of different plays. He was stand in the pocket and deliver a ball. Didn't really run into pressure too much. There was some times where the Carolina pressure got to him a little bit. Luke Gedeke with the rare miss this season. Jadeveon Clowney really hit a good move on him. Baker wasn't able to escape that, whatever. But yeah, I mean, anytime you have 5 incompletions and that's the same amount of touchdowns you've thrown, I think it's a pretty good day. So, I thought he was on point with a lot of his throws, accurate, good decision making. And look, this is a Carolina team that we talked about in the previous show, right? There's a Carolina team that has given him issues before, right? Both times last year were not pretty. The game in Tampa, even though the Bucs won, the offense looked a little bit better than the one in Carolina last year. The game in Tampa was still not very pretty by Baker Mayfield in that one. And then, this just a couple weeks ago, right? Baker Mayfield, while the Buccaneers got the win, Mayfield didn't really look that great. So this is a defense that wasn't really his strongest performances against. And yeah, I understand that Carolina had some guys missing, right? JC Horn's out, Sean Wade's out, there's a couple other guys, Josie Jules I believe is out, so that matters. At the same time though, you gotta go out there and perform, right? And I think Mayfield did just that. So yeah, really really good. And like you said, it's up there, right? For what was his best performance. And it's impressive to where you can, because it would be like, oh, there's no real debate. This is his best performance. But there's been a couple where you're like, oh, maybe this one was, there's been a couple of times, this season where it's been, where you're like, man, this is the best. When you're like, oh no, this is the best. So it just kind of, keeps topping each other here. So yeah, I thought he looked really good today. I thought the pass protection overall was good. And again, he didn't really put the ball in harm's way. That's always important. If this team, gets out of their own way in terms of penalties and turnovers, it's on the offensive side of the ball at least, they can go up there and score against anybody. I think they're very able, and you've seen that, right? You've seen that if they get out of their own way, it's tough to stop them.
9 different pass catchers today for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Big number 13, Mike Evans, leads all of them with 8 receptions, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the day. This is a signature Mike Evans game in the fact that he wasn't necessarily explosive. I mean, did have a big 30-plus yard reception over the middle, but he wasn't explosive. He was just consistent. He was consistently getting open. He was finding, great one-on-one work in the end zone. The Buccaneers went to him multiple times, and the Panthers tried to line up man coverage with him on that second touchdown, and it just was not going to work. I think it was Caleb Farley was the guy that they tried to match up with him, and he just got bitched. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Mike Evans.
Caleb Farley, Mike Jackson a couple times. Xavier Woods, they put on him a few times.
He was taking their lunch money.
Yeah, it was a big day, and look, we talked about last time Mike Evans played this team, right? Had over 100 yards, had a touchdown, and this time, was just as good, and could have had over 100 if the Bucs, decided to accept that one offsides. So whatever, but for all those keeping track, now he's at 915 yards for the season, so he needs 85 next week against New Orleans. So that's a great recipe, right? A team that's dominated you in Tampa.
Without Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah,
without
know,
Marshawn Lattimore. I mean, I believe the last time they played the Saints this year, they still had Lattimore on the roster, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember if Lattimore. I don't think Lattimore. He barely played. Game.
No, I remember he barely played.
I don't think he played. I don't think he played in that game. Yeah. So, It's tough. To predict whether or not I think they're going to make an effort, though, right, to get him that. But yeah, it was a big effort today by Mike Evans. Two impressive touchdowns, and just exactly what they needed. So it's impressive, though. 9 different pass catchers, right? And we're going to talk a lot. There's a lot of names that we really haven't mentioned, right, on this show.
Yeah.
Devin Culp or Raheem Jarrett both caught passes today. Payne Durham caught a touchdown today, even. So those are all three guys that we rarely mention on the show, especially Culp and Jarrett. We do not mention those guys because they just don't really get much playing time. And today they were able to not only get playing time but contribute in major ways.
Yeah, a lot of the rookies popping up, and even the second-year guys. Ryan Miller, a second-year guy, they were targeting him a lot today. Did have a drop, up and down day, but 2 receptions, 26 yards for him. Bucky Irving in the pass game. Another monster performance for Bucky Irving against the Carolina Panthers. 4 receptions, 77 yards. Devin Culp making his NFL regular season debut today. 3 receptions, 52 yards. Again, we talked about that missed touchdown grab. Baker missed him earlier. He could have had a touchdown and maybe some more yards. But Devin Culp, we've been on the hype train for a little while. I think even training camp, it was no secret. You would come on and tell people how big of a fan you are of Devin Culp. He is very athletic. It is clear in his play. I don't know if down the stretch here he's going to be as explosive, but eventually, I feel like next year, if Liam Cohen sticks around, Devin Culp could eventually be a problem. He looked athletic today. And I mean, for a guy making his first start, you got to give him a tip of the cap there.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing because Cade Otton's still out, and it'll be interesting to see, has he earned maybe a couple more snaps when Cade Otton returns, right? That'll be interesting to see how that sort of goes. And I think Payne Durham has also earned more snaps when Cade Otton eventually returns. Hopefully it's this week. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, look, obviously, they got contributions from the normal guys, right, that you've been seeing, right? Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan, Bucky Irving in the passing game, almost had a big long touchdown. Was really effective there. But then they also got contributions from guys again that you haven't really heard much from. So I think again that just shows the domination of the day that you pretty much had. I mean, Ryan Miller had some catches. So Rachaad White, Sean Tucker each had a catch. So yeah, I mean there's a lot of guys that are contributing. I mean Devin Culp was the Bucs' 3rd leading receiver. I mean, so 3 catches for 52 yards, and like you said, Baker missed him. A little bit of a tough throw, but I mean he could have hit him, but missed him on a potential touchdown there, where Culp did a nice job of sort of moving up the field. That's why I noticed a lot throughout the day. Sort of helping out the quarterback a lot, moving around when you're not open. You're sort of standing still. Well, if your quarterback's scrambling, you have to sort of move towards him a little bit, and Culp did a pretty nice job of that a few times today. So to get open, sometimes he got the ball, sometimes he didn't. But I thought overall, again, really, really sharp by Baker Mayfield, really, really sharp by the pass catchers, and just Liam Cohen continues to dial it up. I mean it's getting to the point where they just. I think the expectation is that this guy is gonna at least maybe not be offered a job, but he's gonna get strong interest for a head coaching job. And whether it's head coach or whether it's offensive coordinator, I just don't see how the Bucs can afford to lose him, because he is, and obviously yes, the players executing matters, right? Like we've always said, it's not 100% of the coaches. It's it's the players got to execute as well. But at the same time, Cohen is just proving time and time again. I mean, they almost dropped 50 for the 2nd time this season. I mean, I'm not sure if that's happened in a Bucs season where they dropped 52 times. I just don't know if they're going to be able to afford to let him go. So we'll see. Cross that bridge when you get to it. But I think today was a good day for pretty much everybody on offense. I mean, if you were an offensive player, you had a good day today.
Yeah, absolutely. Jalen McMillan had 2 touchdown passes thrown his way today. He has 7.
That's also now that's
he has 7
6,
touchdowns.
That's 6 touchdowns in the last 4 games.
Yeah, 4 straight games. He has got 4 straight games now with a touchdown grab. That is tied for the 4th longest streak by a rookie in NFL history. I mean, there were records all over the place when you talk about the pace that this Buccaneers offense is on. We have not seen anything like this in the history of the franchise. I mean, we were talking about a Super Bowl level offense with Tom Brady and Byron Leftwich as your offensive coordinator, Bruce Arians kind of pulling the strings. They were doing a lot of great things, but in a lot of ways, they weren't nearly as efficient as this offense is right now. Like, even the Bucs at their best with Tom Brady never had a Bucky Irving on their team.
Right. And I mean, I think the difference, between those teams and this team is that those 2020, 2021, which I would say 2021 is probably the one you're comparing it to because
Yeah.
that was the better offensive year for them, right? I think 2021, the Bucs pretty much won and had offensive success just based on the talent, right? I mean, when you have Antonio Brown as your wide receiver 3, like when you have that guy as your third option, and you have Rob Gronkowski right behind him, like that, you win on talent, right? And you have success just with talent. This Bucs offense is probably on paper is probably not as talented as that Bucs offense, right? On paper, it's not as talented, but that doesn't really seem to matter because that's where the coaching steps up, right? That's where the scheming, the play calls, the play designs, the tendencies, the rhythms. That's where that stuff matters. And I think you're seeing that right now.
Liam Cohen quite literally saving his best for a rainy day. The Buccaneers did get a little bit of rain after halftime. The Buccaneers have had 500 net yards of offense 3 times this season. That is the most in the NFL. Those 3 games are tied for the second most in a season in NFL history, which trails only the 2020 Cowboys with 4. So we're talking about, I mean, a lot needs to go right for another offensive masterclass like this next week because they put up 51 points on the Saints earlier this year. New Orleans is going to make damn sure that does not happen again. Now, I know that there has been some personnel changes. Some things have moved around for the Saints since that game. But, I mean, this is a Saints team that still hates Tampa Bay, and they would love nothing more than to upset the Buccaneers in front of their home crowd next week, mind you. So the Bucs, without a doubt, still have to handle business. But Liam Cohen, they cannot let him go, no matter what.
No matter what?
No matter what.
Okay, I'll hold you to that.
No matter.
You've been somebody who has been a defender of Todd Bowles. So if that's what it takes, and that's no matter what, again, we'll cross that bridge when you get to it, right? And that might be in a couple weeks, right? The Bucs make the playoffs. It will be in a couple weeks. It's not going to be next week, right? Because hopefully the Bucs are playing another game after this one, but. It'll be interesting to see down the stretch how that all unfolds. It's clear that there's going to be, just naturally, there's going to be some interest. And obviously, there's a lot of candidates, right? Mike Vrabel is going to get a lot of interest. Ben Johnson. It's not like Liam Cohen is the only guy. But there is going to be a lot of interest, I think, in Cohen.
Let's get to our first call of the show. Been hanging on for a little while from the 626. Who is this?
What's up, guys? It's Richard T. from the West Coast.
That's right.
Richard, how you doing? How you feeling?
Oh, man. What a good game. This is the game we were supposed to see, or at least somewhat supposed to see, last week, right? So it's a little frustrating that, like, the Bucs can still kind of fumble the ball with one more game left. So I don't feel 100% comfortable, but I'm going to enjoy this for now because there's a lot of good things to take away from this game, particularly, right? You have Bucky Irving. He ends this 9-year drought of not having a 1,000-yard rusher since Doug Martin in 2015. 9 years. 9 years, guys. So
Yeah,
a long time.
We were 10 yards, right? We were 10 yards short last week, last season. But man, Bucky's done it as a rookie with one more to go. So that's just pretty amazing. And this emergence of Jalen McMillan, it's been really impressive because the way the first half of the season, he was practically a no-show. And it really took some time, and now he's exploding onto the scene. Multiple touchdown games. It makes me think, and maybe this is a topic for another day, but can this be a reason why maybe Godwin doesn't re-sign, doesn't come back to the Bucs because he's playing so? But going through my mind right now. But man, this is.
Oh, man. Richard, I hate to cut you off, my friend. I don't know what is going on, but your phone just is not agreeing with you today. But we're going to address some of those points and questions you brought up. We appreciate you, my friend. Go Bucs from the West Coast, man. Richard's normally
sound like
rock,
he was underwater.
He's normally rock solid, but it did sound like he was scuba diving and just got further and further underwater. Like I was holding out hope that eventually it would come around, but I apologize if anybody else was having a hard time understanding Richard, but we appreciate you. The phones are on 305-224-1968, meeting ID 747-973-0150. Wanted to address one of the things that Richard had brought up there, and that was the Chris Godwin situation, the emergence of Jalen McMillan. This is better late than never, right? I think a lot of people were wondering where this guy was in the first half of the season, and now he's on one of the better touchdown streaks this offense has seen so far this season. Does this change things with the Chris Godwin situation? In my opinion, it really doesn't. I think this Buccaneers offense is going to be that much stronger when they are able to re-sign Chris Godwin. And I say when they are able to sign Chris Godwin because I personally believe that while it is an incredibly unfortunate end to his season, I think that injury to Chris Godwin is what is going to help keep him in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers price range and just make it a little bit easier to work with because, I mean, I'm not sure what his market will be among other NFL teams. He was doing a lot of great things early on in this Liam Cohen system, but the Bucs have been winning games and still putting up 500 yards a week without him.
Yeah, so we talked about this, right, when Godwin went down, right? And I see in the chat, he's good, but he's not Chris Godwin. Yeah, he's not, right? Like that's the thing. But from a team building perspective, you would maybe consider not handing out another, 20 plus million to another wide receiver
when you got a running back that you're going to have to pay in 3 years too.
We'll see, don't pay running back, so we'll see.
Yeah,
but
yeah, you're right.
I think that's too far down the line to be worrying about that.
Absolutely.
But you would think that you allocate those resources potentially elsewhere. Now, I do think the Godwin injury helps the Bucs' chances of retaining him, right? I think because it sucks for Godwin because I think he was going to get paid a lot of money had he stayed healthy, because he was the Bucs' best receiver, like before he went down, statistically speaking, and he was a massive part of their offense. But I do think that the injury increased the chance of him being back. And we're going to have a lot of time to talk about this, so we're not going to talk about this forever. This is going to be the main talk of the offseason for the most part, I would assume, if the Bucs are going to re-sign Chris Godwin. I think there's a decent chance that they do. I don't really think McMillan's, success lately has been enough to, be like, well, I think they're going to let him walk. I think if McMillan was maybe a little bit more consistent mid-season, right, where like he kind of disappeared. I think if he were a little bit more consistent at that point, then maybe you ask that question. Like, come on down the stretch here, but I don't know if it's enough to be like, oh, maybe move on from Godwin. So I think you kind of look at it as a positive, right, that you have McMillan here doing this. And I do think that there's a good chance that they'll try and re-sign Chris Godwin, and we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I don't really think it doesn't. I agree with you. It doesn't really change much for me in terms of what I think or what I would personally do in terms of that situation.
Our next caller from the 727. You're on the Can of Fire podcast. Who's this?
Hey, this is David. How are you?
David, how you doing?
Good. So I'm very happy about the game today. I think, it was a complimentary football all around. I think the defense took care of business. The offense was really great. And the main reason why I'm very happy is because I am one of the people that really believes that Todd Bowles is not at fault at many of the games that we lost. If we look, for example, at the last game in Dallas, the defense held Dallas to only 3 points in the entire second half, right? And the offense just kept stalling. And I don't know. I Bleav it's very dangerous, like just to disregard Todd Bowles' really good work that he did in the last 3 years. Just in the same way what's happening last year. I remember last year, a lot of people were saying the same thing about Canales, that Canales should be taking over, and we could not afford to lose Canales. And I think it was a big mistake then. And I don't mean by that saying that Cohen is not a really good offensive coordinator. I think he is a really good offensive coordinator. But we just have to face as well the reality. Like, where else would he go that he would have the same offensive line, the same offensive weapons, a really young team that can make into the playoffs for multiple years to come. So I think, in the perfect world, I think we should keep Bowles and we should keep Cohen, and all of them should be very motivated to do their job. And I think that we should, demand more from Jason Licht. I think he was really unfortunate in the last 3 years with many of the first rounds and second round picks. He's pretty much very inactive when it comes to signing free agents in positions of need. And this is what we need. We need more depth, and we need key players, especially on edge, middle linebacker, and cornerback, to be able to be a Super Bowl contender. And as always, I would like to thank you both for all the, podcasts and everything else. I really enjoy your show.
Hey, we appreciate you, David. Appreciate you calling in, and you made some great points. We're going to break them down here in a minute, man. Go Bucs.
All right, go Bucs.
All right, so want to get your take on that. A lot of interesting points there from, the Liam Cohen, Todd Bowles hypothetical transition, and then obviously Jason Licht. I guess free agents at positions of need were the Bucs. We knew they were going to be weak this year. They are still weak and weaker than they were heading into this season. So that's a great point. Let me get your thoughts, and then I'll throw something out there.
Yeah, so David makes the case, right, to keep Todd Bowles, and look, it does sound weird, right, talking about the security of a head coach after 48-14 win, securing now a winning season. Also, his 9 wins now, so it's officially going to be a winning season.
Got to get to double digits. I don't give a damn about a winning season if it's 9 wins. I would love to see 10 wins.
Yeah, well, I mean,
that's progress. That's real progress for Todd Bowles, and I will give him his credit. I will give him his due in time. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I mean, also, if they don't have double digits, they likely don't make the playoffs. So, they kind of need that. So, I actually saw something earlier, almost right when we started the show. Really, that's just something I wanted to point out there. They said, somebody, I forget who it was, somebody said, with our luck, Washington and Atlanta will end in a tie. That actually, if the Bucs win next week, that actually would help, because as long as Atlanta does not win, that's the only thing. Because if the Bucs would win, the Bucs would end with 10 wins, and the Falcons would end with 9. Even if the Falcons beat the Panthers next week, the Falcons would end with 9. The Bucs would end with 10. So a tie doesn't really do it. The worst case scenario would be a Falcons win for Tampa. So. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of points, right? And yeah, I maybe in an ideal world that Cohen, remains on board and Bowles, stays or whatever, and because a lot of the points he brings up, right? There's a lot of young players on defense. They've had a couple of injuries on defense. Even when guys have gone in, it hasn't really been like it's a scheme thing, kind of at times. It's like guys like Anthony Winfield Jr. maybe not having as good of a year. Levante David slowing down a little bit, Jamel Dean not having as good of a year, things like that, where it's more so execution isn't really on Todd Bowles, and I think that's the case, right? But at the same time, we don't live in an ideal world at all times, and Liam Cohen might be getting some legit head coaching interest, and if you really think that Liam Cohen is this superstar, look, This is a Glazers family that fired Tony Dungy after the Bucs had made the playoffs time and time again and had a winning season time and time again, but they felt like he couldn't get the job done, right? They fired Lovie Smith after they improved, right? With a rookie quarterback, they improved from 2-14 to I believe 6-10. Like they got 4 more wins, and they still fired Lovie Smith. So they fired John Gruden after a winning season. Now I understand that was very different. Context is important there. They were 9-3, lost their final 4 games, ended 9-7, missed the playoffs. But it just goes to show you that, like, just because, like, the Glazers, if they don't believe in a guy going forward, they won't keep him around. And I don't know how they feel about Todd Bowles. I really don't. And I think, you'll find out your answer depending on how the season ends. The Bucs can make the playoffs right now, and there's some people that think Todd Bowles is 100% safe if he makes, if he wins the South and this and that. And then there's other people who think that, he not only needs to win the South, but has to win a playoff game in order to keep his job. So we'll see what happens. He makes a lot of interesting points, though, to keep him around because, there is a lot of young players on defense that you would naturally assume continue to grow. And if they continue to grow, the defense would improve. But if you lose Liam Cohen, at what cost, it would be Todd Bowles' 4th offensive coordinator in 4 years. Todd Bowles would never have an offensive coordinator for more than 1 season as Bucs head coach.
Yeah, and that's a tough shake. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's clear with the Buccaneers' track record right now, it is a lot harder to hire the right head coach than offensive coordinator.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And when you look at Todd Bowles and what he's been able to do, I know that there are a lot of frustrations there and there's a lot of inefficiencies, but if the Buccaneers can get to 10 games, if they can win 10 games this year, they punch their ticket, they win the division for the 4th year in a row, and they make the postseason. I still personally feel like Bowles coming back is the most likely scenario. That is if this team can handle business. And really, I say that because of how big of a risk it is to take a chance on a Liam Cohen. I mean,
it's a big swing.
It is huge. And yeah, you mentioned the other times the Bucs have done it before. Most recently, Lovie Smith and Dirk Cutter. Dirk Cutter had the Buccaneers. He had them with a top 5 offense every year that he was head coach, but they were barely winning 7 games. They sucked ass. Like, they had a good, flashy offense, but he was not a good head coach. He was not a good leader of men. He had players quitting on him. You remember what he did to a rookie, Ronald Jones? I know that Ronald Jones isn't going to really go down in Buccaneers history, but he broke out when Dirk Cutter left because Dirk Cutter kept him in the doghouse. He was not a good head coach. One of the better coordinators in the NFL was not a good coach. That is such a huge risk when you have a head coach who has made the playoffs every year since he's been coach. Now, again, this all applies if the Buccaneers handle business this week. So that's all I'm going to say about it. We do have another call. Appreciate you hanging on for a little while from the 405. Who is this?
This is Mo from Oklahoma.
Mo, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I think we do pretty good. I just hate our defense. Our secondary is weak. The injuries of Winfield and the Whitehead ain't really did nothing all year long. I believe that I think next year will be our year. I think we'll make the playoffs and Washington lose, but I think we're not going to go far. I think we're going to go maybe the first, second round, and that's it. With the defense we got, we can't go nowhere. As far as Bowles, that head coach, and Liam, I like Liam. I like Liam a lot, but I believe that if we can keep him, we need to keep Bowles as our head coach. Every year he do progress, and we can't blame the defense on him because we got too many injuries. Too many injuries in the secondary. That's not his fault. He's scrapping with first-year players and players who don't ever really be on the field. I think he's doing pretty good. They blow a whole lot of coverage and lost a lot of games behind it.
Yeah.
But in the end, at the end of the day, he doing what he can do with what he got. You know what I'm saying? So we're praying to Washington lose tonight, and we make it. We'll just be happy to make it to the playoffs with the roster that we got with all the injuries. That's all I got to say. Go Bucs.
Hey, it's a fair point. Go Bucs. We'll talk to you soon, my friend. Appreciate your call. So we're going to dive a little more into this Todd Bowles thing, and that's just because we're going back and forth. And we're going to wrap up the game, I swear, but there's a couple more points to be made. Now, I am talking from the point of view when I made my point, like if the Buccaneers handle business next week, there are plenty of reasons to keep Todd Bowles around. There are plenty of great arguments to keep him around and fire him. Like Todd Bowles is a divisive enough guy among the fan base to where you can build yourself one hell of an argument one way or the other. If the Buccaneers lose next week,
well, and also this is assuming Atlanta loses tonight, because
sure,
there's a world where the Bucs win next week, but it doesn't matter because Atlanta wins 2 straight.
That's fair. That is fair. Now, that's going to be an interesting conversation if that is the scenario that ends up playing out. But if the Bucs lose next week, I'm done with Bowles. Like, I've seen what I need to see. I think that is the ceiling. It is an impressive second half of the season run. Eventually, you're relying on a bad division to kind of, help you win with having a better record than the other bad teams within that division. The Falcons falling apart. I do think that Penix is going to be all right for them. Interesting to see what he can do against Washington. Everyone going to be crossing their fingers and watching that game. But if they lose to New Orleans, then I think the Buccaneers are in a situation where this goes back to what I said earlier. No matter what, you cannot let Liam Cohen leave the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think if you're even second guessing Todd Bowles' job at the end of the season, that's good enough reason to just take a big old swing on Liam Cohen, because why the hell not? We have seen the best that we can see with Todd Bowles, in my humble opinion. Unless they go on one hell of a playoff run and prove me wrong, if they lose to the Saints next week, then that cements the belief that we have seen the best of the Buccaneers under Todd Bowles, and that's not going to be Super Bowl championship football. So at that point, why the hell not take a risk on Liam Cohen with the success that he's had? And I mean, he's doing a better job than Dave Canales did last year. So there's probably an NFL team out there desperate enough to make him a head coach.
Yeah, there definitely is. I mean, Dave Canales had 1 year as an offensive coordinator, and not even as successful of a year as Liam Cohen has, and he got a head coaching job. So I know it's not apples to apples, and I know it's not the same exact scenario. And also, a lot of the arguments, that would be made about, well, if you promote Cohen, well, the Bucs did that with Raheem Morris, and they did that with Dirk Cutter. Again, not apples to apples. Just because that situation didn't work out doesn't mean this one wouldn't. You can't not. So what? I mean, because the Bucs have never really been successful drafting a quarterback. The next time they really need a quarterback and they're picking in the top 5, they can't pick one. So, like that's what that logic would basically be like. Well, they've only won the Super Bowl with free agent quarterbacks, so you can't take this guy. That wouldn't make any sense. So yeah, I don't really think that's a great, reason why not to. And I think you might be right. It might be, this is a big game next week, right? And if the Buccaneers can still make the play, and it would be a bad feeling, but they can make the playoffs, even if they lose next week, if Atlanta loses both games. So Atlanta finishes up with Washington tonight, and then they finish up with Carolina next week. So if Atlanta loses both games, the Bucs win the NFC South. Which, I mean, losing 2 or 3 down two of your last 3 games to win the South, it'd be an interesting dynamic there. But yeah, I mean, you might be right, and this will give you a lot of answers of how much a Todd Bowles led team is going to be able to give you. Because if they lose next week, you might be right about the ceiling being 9 wins, and you're kind of hoping on a crappy division to win, right? And that's been the case for the last 2 seasons, right? I mean, reality is, yes, the Bucs won a playoff game last year, right? That was impressive. They took Detroit to the brink. That was impressive. At the same time, though, they probably wouldn't have made the playoffs, or they might have been a wild card team had there been a better team in that division. And they've benefited from that, and kudos to them for taking care of business when they needed to. But yeah, we'll see. And again, we'll get our answers soon enough. Again, it's weird. It's a weird situation, right? Because you're talking about the future of the head coach after a 48-14 win, after a win where you've clinched another winning season, and it is strange, right? It is a strange feeling, but this is the situation you find yourself in. And it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do and how they decide to go about things here.
7 runners today for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the offensive side of the football here. We've done a whole show up until this point, and we have not talked about the run game who again carried the load, I would say, for Tampa Bay today. 20 carries, 113 yards for the rookie running back, Bucky Irving. He was less than a yard away from finding the end zone on that big-time receiving haul that he had, but was stopped just short as he stepped out of bounds. But Bucky Irving, dude, we can factor this into a couple of the points that David had brought up, and I think this is a good point to do so because we didn't talk about it, but he had said that Jason Licht should be under the hot seat a little bit more because of the lack of free agent signings the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have made. By the way, some news. In timely fashion, less than a week after we say the Bucs aren't going to sign Shaq Barrett, they go out and sign Shaq Barrett, who may make his debut for the Buccaneers next week against the Saints. Yeah. But going back to Jason Licht, David had kind of nitpicked him about free agent signings in weak positions, not necessarily having as much depth. This Buccaneers defense looking as weak and volatile as it has because of that lack of veteran presence. I will counter that argument with the 2024 draft class every single day of the week. Bucky Irving was one of the few rookies who was the star of the show. Jalen McMillan and Bucky Irving both were huge today. And I think that you do have to give Licht some credit for that as well. If you're going to knock him for the free agent thing, you got to recognize what he's done. And this 24 draft class for Tampa Bay, Graham Barton included, I mean, this is probably the most impactful draft class they have had in a very, very long time, at least under Jason Licht.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, it's been, since 2020 probably. I mean, 2023 last year's was good with Diaby and Kancey there. But I would say, since 2020 when you had Wirfs and you had Winfield, I think you might have posted something about, how like Bucky Irving,
rookie of the decade.
Rookie of the decade. I mean, making the case for it. I would still probably put Tristan Wirfs there, just because, look, I mean, being at tackle, it's hard to, sort of notice that stuff as much. But like what he was doing as a rookie at tackle there was sort of like unheard of. So, I mean, just shutting down everybody he played week after week. So I would still probably have Wirfs 1, but like in terms of, you're talking about, the 2020s, I think Irving's probably second, right? He's probably number 2 on that list in terms of rookie season. So, yeah, and again, like the free agent thing, there's a couple things. One, you're the best teams are the teams that draft well, right? They're the teams that develop in-house, draft in-house, and don't be okay. Who are the teams with the most cap space? I Bleav the team with the most cap space in the entire NFL this year, this upcoming offseason, is the New England Patriots. And the New England Patriots currently have the number 1 overall pick. So what does that tell you, right? A lot of the times, and there is some exceptions, right? There is some, I Bleav Washington, well, they have a good team, right? They have a rookie QB on a rookie contract. That's important. So there's some exceptions where you can have some money, but a lot of the times the teams that are the good teams don't typically have a ton of money to spend in free agency. Your big spenders in free agency are typically your worst teams. So you drafting and developing within, I think, is how you run a sustainable organization, basically. So I think they definitely have hit on a lot of draft picks, and it's important, right? And that's an important part of the job. It's probably, I think, the most important part of the job, if you want me honest with you, in terms of, draft. You got to hit on your drafts. And the Bucs so far have done that for the most part. So you're not going to bat 1,000. No GM is, and I mean, whether you think he should be more active for ANC or not, that's your choice, right? But I mean, I would say that whatever they have done has worked so far. So we'll see how they continue to go about it. I don't think their philosophy is going to change. I think they're going to, not necessarily ignore free agency. They've never truly ignored free agency, but you're going to see them add pieces that make sense and not completely break the bank, because they're just, that's not how they go about business.
The Buccaneers dominated the time of possession battle in their win today, 41 minutes and 11 seconds, as opposed to the Panthers' 18 minutes and 49 seconds, one of the more lopsided time of possession battles I have seen from them recently. As we wrap up here, got to give a shout-out to the special teams unit and maybe honorary team captain. That Mallard duck, who just showed up and was standing next to Trey Palmer. I think it was a decoy look. They were trying to bluff the 2 return set because he was right next to Trey Palmer, and Trey Palmer doesn't never fair catch a goddamn thing. So, I mean, they were trying to run a misdirect there, but Joe Tryon-Shoyinka blocks the punt. It is returned 23 yards for a touchdown by J.J. Russell. It marks the first blocked punt for a touchdown by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers since 11/11/2012 versus the San Diego Chargers. It was Adam Hayward who had blocked that punt.
Fun fact about that. That was actually my first ever Bucs game inside Ram James Stadium.
Yeah,
so,
that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
It marks the first career block for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. I was a little irritated at first because CBS was enamored with the duck, and the broadcast showed it and completely missed the play.
Yeah.
They were talking about the duck, and I had to switch over to J.J. Russell running into the end zone. So luckily we got the slow-mo replay. But again, just goes to show what can happen when all 3 phases of the team show up to play like the Buccaneers did today.
And they had to, right? Didn't have a choice, right? It was because again, it didn't really matter. Like, we could talk about all these scenarios, but like you said on the game preview, like you thought a loss today would be Bowles' job. Like, and that didn't mean that you meant he'd be fired right now, but like you thought there wasn't really much coming back from that, right? From a loss today. And you might be right? And now you're on the verge of that possibly next week, especially a New Orleans team that the last 2 weeks they've been shut out in Green Bay, and then they just lost to the Las Vegas Raiders today. Come on, like you gotta win that game, and we'll see what happens. When you said mallard duck, it reminded me of that in The Office, when Dwight does like the recording thing, and they have the duck there, and he's like, "Oh, it's a duck. No, it's a mallard." So that reminded me of that. But it was like you said, it's the rare special teams. Punt block anyway, but they're even more rare special teams touchdown, and just really sort of, I think, put a exclamation point on how dominant all 3 phases of the game were for the Bucs.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to shout out, we'll give out a couple of game balls here, some honorable mentions, if you will. But just some playmakers on the defensive side of the ball. Buck Wild, the moderator, brings it up. Great point. We said it to start the show. We will say it again as a reminder here at the end. The defense deserves credit. They kept Carolina to 14 points. And after the start that Carolina had, you would have thought this game would be much closer because that first drive for Bryce Young and the offense, they made it look easy. And even Adam Thielen had a couple of explosive plays. He was making double moves. In 2024, Adam Thielen was cooking this Buccaneers secondary at times. He got well open today. I think finished with well over 100 yards on the day as well. But some of those guys stepping up on the defensive side of the ball. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka with the punt block. Let me pull this up here. Sorry, I had the box score in front of me, and then it went away. We got back-to-back sacks on multiple instances today.
Kalijah Kancey, 7.5 sacks now. So
yeah, on a brutal stunt.
Getting closer to my, I Bleav it was either August 31st or September 1st when we did the season predictions, and my bold prediction was that Kalijah Kancey would lead the team in sacks. So we're getting closer.
Chris Braswell had his first sack of his NFL career. It was a big time win on the pass rush. The Buccaneers couldn't recover, but it was a huge hit on Bryce Young, and that ball popped right out of there. Logan Hall had the sack on the following play, which was 4th and 11. So again, multiple back-to-back sacks for Tampa Bay today. Kalijah Kancey getting one in there. Chris Braswell showing up. We were kind of talking about him this week. Said that one of these edge rushers was going to have to show up. I know it was garbage time, but those are the kind of reps that you like to see from Chris Braswell. And I would
building some confidence for him.
Yeah, and I would say Logan Hall probably played one of his more impressive career games today.
I'll tell you what, he actually hasn't been that bad this year.
He's come around.
Has he lived up to the second 33rd overall pick? No, probably not. But he hasn't been terrible. Like, this is. He is you can have him as a rotational guy and be fine with it. You'd like more, right, out of the 33rd overall pick, but you can have him as a rotational guy. And the same thing with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Like, yeah, as the 32nd overall pick, is that great? No, it's not. That's not what the Bucs drafted him to be. But as a rotational guy, he's fine. So, again, just want to make it clear that is not, it's not not absolutely fine, that the 32nd and 33rd overall pick can become rotational pieces for you, but they are playing roles and they've been fine in those roles. So, yeah, I mean, it's good for Braswell to get some confidence as well. Anthony Nelson, he obviously gets a sack there, and Cansey gets a sack. So, yeah, pretty good there by the Bucs defense. Yeah, and we'll see if Shaq Barrett can provide maybe a little bit of a spark. I don't. Personally, I think if people are expecting, 2019 or even 2020, 2021 Shaq Barrett, I think you're going to be disappointed. Yeah, I think to temper the expectations maybe a little bit, but it's cool to see him back. It's good for him. A lot of stuff he's been through and everything. It's clear that there was one spot that he wanted to be back in, and it was Tampa. So he's back there, and we'll see what happens if he can suit up next week. We'll see. But yeah, it was good all around, by the defense, and again, making the plays when they need to be made, timely plays being made by this defense.
Tight end Payne Durham had his first career touchdown on a great play design from offensive coordinator Liam Cohen. Payne Durham getting involved in the game plan here, and I put a little star next to his name because there was something interesting I had noticed. There was a 31-yard completion to Payne Durham early in the game. It was a big play action pass over the middle. But on that play, the Buccaneers are starting to experiment more and more with a lot of these misdirection looks for an opposing defense. They had Jalen McMillan lined up in the shotgun on the right-hand side of Baker Mayfield. He was in the game as the running back. And then Rachaad White motioned out to the left as the slot receiver. So, I mean, there's misdirections all over the field for an opposing defense, considering that Payne Durham is the guy that is wide open 31 yards down the field. And then again, another great play design for him to sneak behind the defense later on when they target him in the red zone. Great day for Payne Durham. We'll get into the official game balls here. And I know it's kind of cliche. It's going to be most of the superstars today, but we'll start things off with Baker Mayfield. 27 for 32, 359, 5 touchdowns, a 153.0 passer rating on the day. Baker Mayfield ties his career single game high for touchdowns, and his statistics on the season now are pretty ridiculous. I'm trying to roll them up, but they don't have the they don't have the updated ones. 39 touchdowns and a little over 4,200 yards for Baker Mayfield.
So likely going to reach 40
highs.
touchdowns. Likely going to reach 40 touchdowns. So yeah, pretty good day for Baker. So yeah, it's been it's been fun. It's been a roller coaster, obviously, and you come to expect that. And that's fine because the highs are pretty high, and when he's on, this is what it looks like. So
Bucky Irving, 20 carries, 113 yards. We talked about his day earlier, but you got to give him his flowers for sure. He eclipses 1,000 rushing yards on the season, becomes the first Buccaneers running back to do it in 9 years, as Richard T had said from Under the Bay a little bit earlier. Congrats to Bucky Irving. And then the final one, I mean, come on. We'll give an honorable mention to Devin Culp there just to keep you on your toes, but I think it's got to go to Mike Evans. As we said earlier, nothing explosive about his day. There was that big 30-plus yard reception over the middle, but I mean, he was consistently open today. 8 receptions, 97 yards, and 2 touchdowns for big number 13, who, Evan, needs how many yards to get to 1,000?
85, I believe. So that's the watch for right now, 85. So we'll see. I mean, like I said, I think obviously the Buccaneers are going to make it an effort, right? Like I think they were making an effort early to get Bucky Irving his yards, right? And it's not like Irving needed 20 yards or whatever, but he needed a good bit, and it's not all going to happen on one play, right? So it's going to have to be. You might be a little nervous, right? It might be in the third quarter, maybe the fourth quarter, because I mean, 85 is still a big number, but I see a lot of people are like, well, yeah, just give him the ball, right? Well, the tough thing is defenses are going to be keying in on him too. Like the defense is not just going to be allowing him to catch the ball. They're going to be scheming up ways to stop him and slow him down. So it's easier said than done to get him the football, but we'll see. I think they're going to give it a strong effort next week.
A lot on the line.
It does suck because like if he never gets hurt, he already has it. So
yeah.
that sort of sucks.
A lot on the line for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next week. A lot on the line for Liam Cohen, Todd Bowles, quite literally everyone involved. So if you are still on this roller coaster after 17 weeks of football, we got one game left. And we'll see what happens.
Hard to believe. Hard to believe.
I know. Here we are.
Just a couple weeks ago, we were, doing the season preview show, season prediction show, and talking about Washington, and here we are in the final regular season game of the season. Pretty crazy.
Want to say thank you to everybody who hung out with us today from the YouTube live chat, all the moderators holding it down, all the people that had called in today. I think it was Mo from the mobile home park, Richard T, David, all of our great callers. We appreciate you guys, and look forward to talking to you again soon. We have got more content coming your way on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/cannonfirepodcast, Buccaneer news updates, and more. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned to us over there. You can find the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram. You can also find him on Instagram at Bucs_Daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. It almost got away from me, but I reeled it back in there.
Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, check me out on there. Over at BucsNation.com. I'm going to have the reactions, post-game reactions. And look, there's probably going to be a lot, right? A lot of positive things, offensive fireworks, right? So there's going to be a lot of reactions to go around for this game. And then also, going to be taking a look at New Orleans upcoming. So, we'll be keeping an eye on all that good stuff on the Cannon Fire Podcast YouTube channel. If you're listening on audio, we appreciate you listening on audio, no doubt. But if you do want a little bit more content throughout the week, maybe right after, Victory Monday or later in the week, we'll have all good stuff for you. Have best and worst from this game, Victory Monday. And then also later in the week, going to have betting the Bucs, which, by the way, went 4-0 this week. And then also going to have players to watch for the final regular season game, the final regular season edition of all these things here. So down the stretch here, we are getting rolling.
Game ball for the Duck. Great point. Richard T. almost forgot. Game ball for the Duck, the honorary special teams captain today for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last but not least, you can find myself, Instagram and Twitter at Retticus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. But that's the show. Thank you guys once again for hanging out with us. We will talk to you very soon. Maybe the middle of this week at some point. We'll figure out a time and day.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Yeah.
Mr. Rhett has a birthday coming up. He's a New Year's Eve baby. So happy birthday, early birthday to Rhett. New Year's Eve baby. So if we don't talk to you guys as in terms of a show, midweek show, again, sort of up in the air because of the holidays and stuff still. So we'll be back, normal probably next week. But yeah, we'll see you when we see you basically, but we will still have plenty of content out on the YouTube channel.
Great point. Thank you, my friend. Happy holidays to everybody. I don't know if we didn't say it enough this year. Normally we make a bigger deal out of it, but hope you guys had a great Christmas. And yes, Happy New Year. I am going to be taking things easy at home. I do not like going out on my birthday. New Year's Eve, you got to stay in. You got to stay safe. Avoid all those crazy drivers. So we're going to throw some steaks on the grill, which I very much look forward to. But thank you guys once again for hanging out with us. We will talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, go Bucs.